I'm here to talk about the already extant and expanding collusion of government and corporation in restricting the individual freedom and autonomy upon which the productive, generous, and stable psyche, economy, and state are themselves necessarily founded. I'll begin my comments, therefore, in the most general terms to shed light on the mounting problem. There are now 700 million CCTVs in China under the rule of the Communist Party. The system to which those electronic eyes are attached is the most complete state apparatus of surveillance yet imagined, with the ability not only to recognize faces at a distance, but gait itself when facial features are hidden or obscured. Such capability can and will soon be augmented to the point where the movement of eyes themselves, monitored by high-resolution and intelligent cameras, will soon be sufficient to identify any aware and active party. The demented, naive, and prideful engineers who so enthusiastically helped build this system call it Skynet, after the rogue and all-seeing technology that took such a dreadfully wrong turn in the famous science fiction movie Terminator series, featuring artificially intelligent robot intelligences hell-bent on protecting themselves by destroying humanity. The name also references a well-known Chinese phrase describing the reach of the divine itself. The net of heaven is vast, yet it misses nothing.
Everyone, welcome to my analysis. As you can see, Jordan Peterson just gave it a very rousing explanation in 2 minutes. Jordan Peterson's in a committee right now, and a lot of Democrats are out here lamenting the fact that Republicans are using or weaponizing weaponizing this hearing to attack government and Democrats. And it's so funny how they're not self-aware enough to realize that they're getting some of the taste of their own medicine. They're doing this to Trump right now. They're using any legal avenues to kind of get at Trump and attack Trump. And even when someone bring up concerns about the government oversight, which is what this video is going to be about, and I'm going to give more into the video in the future. But right now, I want to show you some of the reactions, a particular reaction from Representative Dan Goldman, as he laments the Republicans' attempt for stopping government censorship of American citizens. The First Amendment is not absolute. Let's take a look at the clip, and then I'll give you my full thoughts at the end of it. Let's take a look.
Mr. Chairman, you continually say that it used to be that both parties agreed with the First Amendment. It didn't used to be. It is. It remains the case. We all agree with the First Amendment. But the problem is that the First Amendment is not absolute. It does not protect any single thing anyone says. And there are limits, and that's important. And what this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government from monitoring what is going on social media and otherwise out there, so that misinformation and disinformation can run rampant on Elon Musk's social platform and every other social platform, so that the Republicans, can benefit from it in November's election. That is why this committee exists,
the time of the gentleman,
and we have gotten no evidence to support any of these allegations.
You've seen that and you heard that. And one of the reasons I always make the claim that the reason why the Democrats are in such a huge favor of a big state is because a lot of the bureaucracies, such as the FBI, the Department of Education, all these bureaucratic agencies are dominated ideologically by the Democratic Party. They're Democrats, voting Democrats, donate to Democrats. So they have a lot of huge ideological control over these institutions. So that's why liberals are so trusting of it. It's the same thing with mainstream media. Only 70% of Democrats trust mainstream news. That's because if you look at the journalists, majority of them are Democrat, majority of them donate Democrat. Democrats only really trust people of their own ideological side. So when you hear the Democrats here preaching about, we trust our government, we should be anti disinformation, misinformation, and we shouldn't be allowed to censor American citizens. He talks about what this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government, aka chill the institutions that us Democrats have ideological control over, from monitoring what's going on social media. Makes more sense, right? So that misinformation, disinformation can run rampant on Elon Musk's social media effort. You had to highlight a political opposition or so-called political opposition from him. so that the Democrats can benefit from it in November's election. That's a direct quote. That's what they're really concerned about. Because at the end of the day, if the truth helped them, if free speech helped the Democratic Party, they'll be agreeing with what's going on right now. But free speech doesn't help the Democratic Party. Censorship helps the Democratic Party. And this has been a talking point of mine that I've been speaking about a long time in my channel, that climate change has the same effect, right? They get all these climate change experts. And if you look into the specifics, you dig into specifics, these people work around climate change, but they don't have the actual specific expertise to actually make a educated or a valid opinion about the predictions of whether climate change is an actual threat or not from a long-term perspective, right? And then at the same breath, these Democrats don't talk about the Trump-Russia collusion disinformation, which was allowed to spread unchecked for years. A true story about Joe Biden's corruption and his son's laptop was censored weeks before the 2020 election. The 2020 election and COVID-19 were two of the most censored events in American history, with the Department of Homeland Security-backed censorship consortiums censoring millions of social media posts that spoke against this, right? The government is worried about Republicans obstructing the federal government's ability to censor social media platforms because Democrats rely on the government censorship to shape the narrative and influence election outcomes. It is disheartening to witness the modern Democratic Party openly endorsing government censorship of American citizens. And this is the correct take to have on it, because that's the reality. That's the truth. I already exposed the bias. If you look at any bureaucracy, pick any federal agency, and look at the amount of people who donate Republican and Democrat, you'll see an overwhelming advantage towards the Democratic Party. This is why the Democrats trust them. These people use smoke screens. They use any type of way to feign objectivity, but in reality, they're not objective actors here. And this video kind of goes in coincide with my inconvenient truths about NGOs, is that these people are using institutions that they dominate as the arbitrary or the referee. If you knew a referee was paid off by the opposing team, would you trust that referee? No. This is the same argument that American citizens are having against the government right now. And they're mad that because there's a political incentive for the Republicans to expose this, they're mad. But at the end of the day, this is the truth, right? This is the truth. They're so frightened about this, right? And here's another clip before I go into the full context of the video of Jordan Peterson kind of espousing upon some of the issues of having a politically dominated institution being the arbiter of what is factual, what is information, disinformation, what is right or wrong based on their ideological bias. Let's take a look.
Dr. Peterson, I want you to talk about the debanking issue we saw so much of, and how that was, particularly, I guess, with the truckers, and how that's, because I see it coming. I see it coming here, and it frightens me. I want you to talk about what took place in Canada and if it in any way impacted you.
Well, there was essentially a working class protest against the extensive length of the COVID lockdowns. And one consequence of that was that Canadians who participated, even by donating to the protest and even by donating small amounts to the protest, had their bank accounts seized in consequence of a collusion between the banks and the government that was extrajudicial, that was recently deemed unconstitutional, despite the fact that we don't have strong First Amendment claims. So this happened. The government is currently maneuvering in Canada to make the possibility of such collusion a certainty across multiple actual and potential domains of so-called harm, particularly in relationship to government-defined hate. Yes, this is absolutely coming. And it's facilitated by the kinds of advancements in technology that we talked about today.
Yeah.
Woke Skynet. Imagine that, right? And this is the problem that a lot of people on the left face, is that they pretend that they're virtue signaling. They're saying that, oh, we're only doing what's right, but right according to who? Right? Because at the end of the day, when you don't have a shared foundation, right? When we don't see each other as one people, one nation under God, you go into this tribalistic politics that's been going on right now. And how we see it is, okay, you have an ideological capture of these institutions, and now you want to feign objectivity and say, oh, we should trust these institutions to rule objectively and fairly amongst groups of people. We want to give this institution so much power, so much access to our information, to the point where they can debank us. They can censor you, essentially, and this is This is obvious to anyone who's paying attention that the left loves to censor people. The left loves to exclude people that goes against their purview. So who's to say that these people who ideologically captured all these institutions in government won't leverage their ideological bias and do things based on their ideological bias to disproportionately hurt people that's opposed to their view on things, their political preference? You can't deny that. You already saw it with Justin Trudeau. He already mentioned how it was unconstitutional and they had weaker laws than we do. And you want Democrats in America to be able to roughshod over the First Amendment because they deem certain things as hate speech when that's merely a subjective standard? We can't make laws based on subjective standards. If all of society doesn't agree on that law, you shouldn't be able to pass that law. But because they have ideological capture, they want to make claims. They want to take credibility. They want to take authority. That's why the Ministry of Truth of fighting misinformation, disinformation got destroyed. No one supported it because we all saw the obvious political bias that the minister would have. And this is not, you can't, the left cannot sit here and deny that they're not in an ideological cult right now. And then for Dan Goldman's point of view, how he talked about there's no evidence of it. We just exposed evidence about COVID, the Joe Biden laptop story, how Sam Harris even admitted himself that they weren't sure the validity of the story, but they knew that the story could hurt Biden, so they wanted to censor it all across the board, and they colluded amongst each other to deny access to that information. They lobbied Facebook. Hey, Facebook, stop doing this. The Twitter files exposed that the government has special access to deboost and boost information that they found unfavorable to them. What defines disinformation? Evidence, facts that goes outside any ideological bias, or is merely the positions of the facts? If I have facts that says, hey, police brutality is not the biggest issue to the black community, black on black crime is. Black on black crime put more black bodies in caskets than black police brutality. Is that disinformation? It's disinformation if it challenges the narrative of the established power, aka the ideological dominant purview of the Democrats. The Democrats don't like that evidence that goes counter to their narrative because it doesn't make sense. This is the problem with misinformation, disinformation. The World Economic Forum had the same template. The biggest concern for them is not poverty, the economy. It was misinformation, disinformation. That was the number one concern of the WEF, the World Economic Forum. So how do we know this is just not a power trip, an attempt at power to control information? And then once you have the power, the information, create incentives to nudge people down your ideological wheelhouse. How we know that's not the case? That's what I'm saying. Government has to be a referee. It cannot be some arbiter, some interventionist. This is why government intervention has never helped the situation. It only makes situations worse. And with the technology that we have coming down the pipeline, it'll be even more tempting for the government to justify intervention in the private lives of its citizens. This is why we should be more vigilant as a people, more disciplined as a people to limit the power of the government. Because at the end of the day, the government is a tyrant in the making. And that's to be the purview of every American that looks at the government. The government is always will be a possible tyrant. If you give unfetterable power to the government, you're creating tyranny. Because if all men were angels, we would have no need for government. So to pretend that the government has your best interest at heart as a citizen is folly, is naivety. But I digress. Let's listen into more of the Jordan Peterson video. I'll give it 2 minutes and then I'll wrap it up at the end of the clip. Let's go.
Integrated with her, indicating their compliance with the dictates of the Chinese Communist Party, allowing for full control over access to everything they possess electronically. Most ominously, their savings and their access to travel. Certainly all modern means of travel, but increasingly as the electronic gates come up, even by walking. If you're Chinese or a visitor, your access to the world can be reduced to zero if your social credit score falls beyond an arbitrary minimum. This allows you purposefully to be shut out of all activities that can be virtualized. And in a rapidly virtualizing world, this increasingly means all activities: driving, shopping, working, eating, finding shelter, even fraternizing with friends and family. as merely being in the presence of someone with a low social credit score means that your own score can be lowered. This has also opened up the opportunity for the government to extract slave-like labor from its citizens, so burdened, as the donation of free work to the state still constitute one means by which erring Chinese men and women can increase their score and remain part of human society. This is precisely the payment system most desired by...
So if people on the left get the hand of this technology, and the left already shown have a habit of trying to take over institutions and put themselves in position of power, when they leverage this current circumstances to bend it under their own will. We already saw it with Google AI. Look, I don't care what the left says. I don't care if they say, oh, it doesn't matter if I'm a leftist or whatever. I'll call things down the middle. No, you won't. Because you saw what happened with Gemini AI. It was able to express that ideological bias that a lot of these liberals don't even see that they have. They say, oh, that's wrong based on your purview. But what is wrong objectively? This is what I'm saying. For government to even have all this power, there must be a moral, objective standard that is not bent or molded by any ideological camp. It has to be something that all of society can agree on. And usually it's hard to do that in a global perspective. It's easier to do it in a national perspective. What does us Americans conceive as right or wrong in our country? But the minute you try to make a global standard, it's not really going to be objective. It's going to be a dictate, an edict. Hey, I need all of society to be this way or else. Because the government doesn't arrange things to go down a certain way. It forces things. And like Milton Friedman said, and this is also going to be my position as well, if you have to force someone to do a certain thing, it's not right by default. It doesn't matter your justification. It doesn't matter your rationale. It is not right by default. Oh, you forced me out of public conversation because you didn't like what I have to say. You're automatically in the wrong. This is why censorship is a very dangerous concept that the left seems to be in love with right now because they have the power right now. But the minute you use it against them, they want to sit here and cry. I digress. Let's continue.
The most tyrannical, not the work for me and benefit thereby that constitutes the contractual arrangement undertaken by free and sovereign citizens, but the work for me and I will lift the deprivation I imposed. It has always been the leitmotif of the slaver. Why is any of this relevant to people in the West? Well, because the technology that the Chinese Communist Party employs is an extension of Western technology. Because we already fell prey to the terrible temptation of lockdown employed by that state in the face of hypothetical crisis once and in the very recent past. Because we're walking step by step in the same direction, partly because of the hypothetical convenience of universal and automatic recognition of identity, and partly because any problem whatsoever that now confronts us can easily be used to justify the increasing reach of the security and nanny state.
And that I'll end it off there. Jordan Peterson gave a stark warning, right? Is that the government, end of the day, government like control. Government is a dictator in waiting. That's how I see the government. This is why I'm a conservative. Limited government. That means if I had to choose, hey, do you want to limit the freedoms and privileges of the American citizen or the power and reach of the government? I'm always going to choose the government every single time. Because if the government was run by goodwill people, there will be no need for government. Government exists because people are corruptible themselves. And who manages the government? Human beings and people themselves. So that means it has to be limited. It has to be restricted. You can't have unfettered power, unfettered access, and not contemplate the ability of it being corrupted or leveraged or used in a way to push an ideological slant. And this is something that the left seems to not recognize. The left have this, I guess, positive view of human nature. They look to see the good in people without recognizing that the bad in people. Conservatives acknowledge both, if not the negative of human nature is that, hey, we should believe in negative rights, aka there's no rights without responsibility. And the left seems to think, no, everyone should have rights without responsibility. And that's how you create a dictator. Oh, I have the right to have unfettered power, but what's your responsibility with that unfettered power? Unsupervised? No, you have to be supervised. If you have unlimited power, you should have no ability to hide. Everything has to be transparent. Everything has to be tracked because you're in a position of power where you can use it for good or use it for bad, and you must be monitored. The government always loved to monitor citizens, but the government never likes the citizens to have the ability to monitor themselves. And that opens up to what? Corruption. And that's what we're facing right now in our state. And Jordan Peterson has gave us a stark warning. If you've seen any examples around the world, governments are chopping, they're chopping at the bit, especially the socialists. This is why we've seen a strong push of communists lately. This is why they took over the education system, pushing socialism as a good idea, pushing capitalism is bad, because they want to be able to get a socialist in there. Imagine a socialist with all of the surveillance power of technology that's available to us today. Oh my God, 1984, here we come. That's a socialist dream, because socialists, they're not here about putting out, ushering a paradise, making lives better for everyone unilaterally. The true motive of a socialist is to gain power of production, gain power of the state to enact their will like a king, right? And the Democrats want to be this aristocratic, ideological group that's in control of all society. And they'll be the new nobility class. Democrat voters are elitists who think that they're above everyone else. That's just my thoughts from an ideological standpoint anyway. Let me hear yours in the comment section. What do you guys think about the hearing? Do you agree with Jordan Peterson that this is a very concerning event and that we should be more vigilant and more skeptical of government power, especially when in times of crisis where they'll utilize our emotional vulnerabilities to justify more power for themselves? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I really like to hear what you guys have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate you guys watching to the end of the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.